My name is Annelise Bram, and at 70, I've learned that silence often cuts deeper than shouting. I've always been a quiet woman, steady, methodical, the kind of person who folds grocery bags for reuse and pays bills a week early. After 40 years cleaning offices and hotel rooms across Charleston, I bought this little house on Calhoun Street, a weathered, pale blue cottage with magnolias in the yard. Every scuff on the floor and patch of paint had my fingerprints on it. It was mine in every sense that mattered. When I came back from visiting my cousin in Savannah, suitcase still rolling behind me, I slipped my key into the lock. It jammed halfway, then stopped cold. I tried again, wiggling, pressing, whispering as if coaxing a stubborn child. But the key wouldn't turn. My stomach tightened. Someone had changed the lock. For a moment, I thought there must have been a mistake, a repair I'd forgotten approving. Then the porch light flicked on. Footsteps approached. The door opened, and my daughter stood there. Corey leaned against the frame, one hand on her hip, her face calm in that too-practiced way that used to fool me. "You shouldn't be here, Mom," she said. Her voice was soft, but stripped of warmth. "It's ours now." Behind her, I saw Jace, her partner, standing with his arms crossed, eyes darting anywhere but at me. The sight made my breath catch my furniture rearranged. My pictures gone. A new rug where my old woven mat should have been. I stared at my daughter, searching for a trace of the child I'd once carried on my back to her first day of school. Nothing. Only cool, deliberate distance. My hands trembled, but I tucked them into my coat pockets before she could see. "Well," I said quietly, the word steadying me as I spoke it, "I suppose things really have changed." Corey blinked, maybe expecting tears, maybe expecting me to plead, but I only smiled. Inside my coat, my fingers brushed the phone in my pocket, the one she'd bought me for staying connected. I pressed the side button, felt the faint vibration of the recorder starting, and looked her straight in the eye. "Then let's talk about it," I said, stepping over the threshold that used to be mine. The air inside smelled like new paint and betrayal, and I realized this conversation would be longer and far more dangerous than either of us yet understood. Corey's voice faded behind me as I set my suitcase by the hallway wall. My shoes left faint marks on the polished floor she'd had it refinished. The air inside smelled of new varnish and lilac candles, a scent too clean, too foreign. My house no longer breathed the way it used to. I kept my hands at my sides and let my eyes move slowly over what had once been my home. The framed photographs that used to line the hallway. Robert's graduation, my wedding, the first Christmas tree we bought after the flood were gone. In their place hung 3 abstract prints, black and white, without faces or memories. The rocking chair I'd brought from my mother's porch was missing. Later, I would find it stacked in the garage, its cushion torn. It took me back decades to the girl I used to be. I was 23 when my husband, Victor, collapsed at work. A widow before I'd learned how to drive. I cleaned offices by night, hotels by day, hands swollen, knuckles split open from bleach. I counted change in coffee cans, told myself it was only until Corey finished school. At 58, I bought this house in cash deed in my name. No mortgage, no one's help. I remember standing on this very porch, holding the key, whispering, "You did it, Annelise." For the first time, I didn't owe anyone anything. Years later, when Corey lost her marketing job and called crying about rent, I said, "Come stay here, just until you get back on your feet." Temporarily. The word sounded harmless back then, soft as mercy. Now, as I watched her move through my kitchen, reaching for my teacups as if they were hers, that word turned sharp in my memory. She glanced over her shoulder and said, "I'm making coffee. Do you want some?" Her tone carried a faint impatience, the kind you reserve for guests who overstay their welcome. I nodded, even as something heavy and unfamiliar settled in my chest. It felt like the moment before a storm, the air still, yet already electric. The changes began quietly, almost politely, like a stranger easing into a conversation that wasn't theirs. One Friday night, Corey invited a few friends over from her old office. I heard their laughter before I reached the kitchen. They were clustered around the island, sipping wine out of my crystal glasses. "This house has great bones," one of them said, running her manicured fingers over the marble countertop. "But it's so vintage. You could really modernize it." Corey smiled. That bright, public smile that never reached her eyes. "We're working on it, slowly. You know how my mom gets about change." Her voice dipped into a playful tone, but the words landed heavy. "We're working on it." I stood by the doorway, invisible. No one looked my way until a woman in gold earrings said, "Oh, hi. You must be Corey's mom. You have such a cozy old place." Old, cozy, temporary. Words that rewrote my home, one polite insult at a time. Within weeks, my phone stopped ringing with bills. When I asked about it, Corey said, "Oh, I switched the utilities. Easier if I handle them now. Don't worry, Mom." I wanted to protest but stopped myself. It was just the water and electricity, nothing I couldn't reverse. Or so I thought. The next morning, as I collected the mail, I noticed my name missing from the envelopes. Her name was there instead on the gas bill, on the insurance renewal. Even the county tax notice was addressed to Corinna Delane. That evening, my neighbor Mireya Quint called me over for tea. She'd lived next door for 20 years, sharp-eyed and gentle. She listened as I told her about the utilities, the new decor, the laughter that wasn't mine. She took my hand and said softly, "You're not being helped. Annelise, you're being eased out." Across the fence, Jace's voice floated from the porch. "Babe, we should refinance, get the equity working for us." Corey laughed. "You sound like my mom with her savings envelopes. We're not doing that old stuff anymore." Mireya squeezed my hand, her thumb tracing slow circles over my skin. "You'd better start keeping receipts," she murmured, "before they keep everything else." It was late afternoon when the letter came, a thick white envelope stamped with the insignia of the Federal Employees Pension Office. I almost tossed it into the drawer with the rest of the unopened mail, but something about the weight of it made me stop. Inside was a notice of pension recalculation and a savings bond payout I'd forgotten existed. Together, it came to just over $240,000. For a long time, I sat at the kitchen table, rereading the letter until the numbers blurred. The air felt too still. I had lived my whole life counting quarters. Now, there was more money on that paper than I had ever dared to imagine. The phone rang. It was the bank confirming the deposit date. I didn't realize Corey was home until I turned around and saw her standing by the doorway, her eyes wide, smile already forming. "Wow, Mom," she said softly, almost reverent. "That's incredible news." Her tone was sugar smooth, the kind she hadn't used since before she moved in. She walked over, placed her hand on mine, her nails perfectly painted, and said, "You must feel so relieved. You've worked so hard all your life." I nodded, unsure what to say. She pulled a chair beside me. "You know, we should think about investing this together, maybe in property or stocks. It'll secure your future and ours." That word "ours" echoed in the room long after she stopped talking. It sounded heavy, rehearsed, like something she'd already said to someone else. Jace came in from the porch, nodding approvingly. It's smart. Mrs. Bram. Money doesn't grow sitting in the bank. I forced a smile, folding the letter neatly before slipping it back into the envelope. I'll think about it, I said. Corey leaned in, her perfume filling the space between us. Of course, we just want what's best for you. But as I looked at her so calm, so certain, I felt the faintest chill. It wasn't what she said that frightened me. It was how naturally she'd already included herself in the sentence. The sound woke me before I knew what it was. Soft laughter coming from the kitchen, followed by the low hum of a voice. I glanced at the clock. 2 a.m. The house was dark except for a strip of light under the door. I slipped on my robe and moved quietly down the hall, stopping when I heard my daughter's voice. She was speaking in a whisper, the kind used for secrets you don't want the walls to hear. Yeah, Nevin, I've got her right where I need her, Corey said. She's still thinking about that inheritance. I'll tell her the papers are for a tax adjustment. It'll look official. Once she signs, we can start the process to transfer the deed. Nevin, I recognized the name faintly. Her cousin from Colombia, the one who worked as a notary. My pulse hammered in my throat. There was a pause, the sound of Corey pouring something into a cup. She's getting forgetful, she continued. Sometimes she repeats things twice. We'll use that. If she resists later, we'll say she's showing early signs of confusion. Jace already found a realtor. He says the place could go for $520 easy. A low male chuckle answered through the speakerphone. That's solid money. Make sure you get her signature clean. After that, everything's legal. My knees nearly gave out. The tiled floor felt like ice under my bare feet. I gripped the doorframe, staring at the glow of the phone on the counter. Her face half lit, eyes bright with greed I didn't recognize. I backed away before the sound of my breathing gave me away. In my bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed, trembling. I thought of all the nights I'd come home bone-tired from work, counting every dollar to buy this house. Every penny had been earned in sweat. On the nightstand lay the phone Corey had bought me last Christmas. So, you can keep up with us. My hands were still shaking when I opened the voice memo app and hit record, whispering the date and time. From that moment, sleep became a luxury. Every word they spoke from that night on would become my armor, proof that even the kindest blood can turn cold when money enters the room. The next morning, I drove downtown before sunrise. I hadn't slept since the night of that call, but my thoughts were sharp, cold, arranged like dominoes ready to fall. I parked 2 blocks from the legal office and walked the rest of the way, clutching the folder that held my deed, my ID, and the letter from the pension office, the proof of everything that was still mine. The woman who met me was younger than I expected. Micah Joe, elder law attorney, spoke with the calm confidence of someone who'd seen this kind of cruelty too often. She listened quietly as I told her everything, my daughter. The cousin, the forged transfer. When I finished, she removed her glasses and said, Mrs. Bram, what you're describing is called elder financial exploitation. It's serious. Don't sign anything, not even a receipt, without me reviewing it first. Especially no broad power of attorney. Her words steadied me more than any comfort could. She gave me a small card with her cell number handwritten on the back. Start documenting everything, she added. If they push you, smile and nod. Let them think you're harmless. That afternoon, I made an appointment with my doctor. I told him I wanted a cognitive evaluation. He chuckled. But when I explained, his expression changed. After the tests, he handed me the printed results. You're perfectly sharp. Annelise, he said. Keep this safe. Back home. I went next door to see Maria. She poured coffee and listened as I laid out my plan in a whisper. Within a day, She'd found someone, Keir Hollis, a private investigator she trusted from her time on the neighborhood council. Keir came by pretending to check the plumbing line. By evening, he had installed 3 discrete cameras, one in the kitchen, one by the desk, another near the hallway. Small microphones hid beneath picture frames. For the next week, I played my role. I repeated questions, misplaced my glasses, called Corey Claire by mistake. Each time, she sighed a little louder, grew a little bolder. By the time the cameras blinked their tiny red lights, she had already started calling me forgetful to Jace. I smiled when she said it. Let her think so. A woman they believe is fading is a woman they never see coming. A week later, I stew 350 words deep in the kitchen with a suitcase half filled and my coat draped over a chair. Corey leaned against the counter, phone in hand, pretending not to watch me. I'm going to take a little trip, I said, keeping my tone light. 2 weeks, maybe less. Just need to clear my mind. She looked up sharply, then masked it with a smile. That's great. Mom, some rest will do you good. Don't worry, we'll take care of the house. I nodded, letting the lie settle. I know you will. By noon the next day, I was checking into a small inn on the edge of Charleston Harbor, signing the register under my maiden name, Annelise Kavanaugh. The room was simple white curtains, wooden desk. No questions asked. From the window, I could almost see the church spires rising over the historic district. That evening, Keir Hollis met me in the lobby, a dark briefcase in hand. He placed a flash drive and a folder on the table. You're about to see how far they'll go, he said quietly, over the next days. The footage came in like chapters of a crime I hadn't yet reported. Corey at the dining table, practicing my signature on old envelopes. Nevin arriving with crisp manila folders, whispering about notarization dates. Jace touring a realtor through my living room, explaining that the owner's moving to assisted care soon. Each clip carried a timestamp and Keir's affidavit, neat as law. Watching them, my stomach twisted, but I couldn't look away. The woman I saw on the screen, my daughter, smiled easily as she built her own mother's disappearance on paper. At night, I lay awake in the quiet inn room, the harbor wind rattling the shutters. My fear no longer felt sharp. It had hardened into purpose. They believed I'd vanished to rest. In truth, I was documenting every breath they took. When Keir called to say the files were secured and backed up in 3 locations, I exhaled for the first time in days. The trap was set. All that was left was for them to spring it. I came home on a bright afternoon, suitcase in hand, the azaleas by the porch just beginning to bloom. The sun made the brass handle glint, but when I fit my key into the lock, it stopped cold again. They'd changed it this time with confidence. I knocked once. Then again, the door opened a few inches, and Corey appeared, arms crossed, face blank. You can't live here anymore. Mom, she said, her tone flat as glass. You should have stayed with your cousin. It's better for everyone. Behind her, Jace lingered in the hallway, uneasy. I could see the corner of a box labeled estate files stacked near my old desk. I see, I said quietly. Then let's not argue here. Come to the backyard. I just want to talk. She hesitated, but curiosity or arrogance won. Minutes later, they stood beneath the oak tree behind the house, the same spot where we used to eat watermelon on summer nights. I placed my phone on the patio table and pressed play. The air filled with the sound of Corey's voice, crisp and unmistakable. She's getting forgetful. We'll say she's confused. Jace already found a realtor. 520 easy. Nevin's voice followed. Tinny, but clear. Make sure you get her signature clean. After that, everything's legal. The color drained from her face. Jace stared at the ground, jaw tight. At that moment, a silver sedan pulled into the alley. Micah Jo stepped out with two uniformed officers. She greeted me with a small nod, then turned to Corey. "Ms. Delane, this is a temporary restraining order under the Elder Protection Act. You're not to alter, sell, or occupy this property until the investigation concludes." Corey's mouth opened, then closed again. Jace finally whispered, "You recorded us." I met his eyes and picked up my phone. "No," I said. "You recorded yourselves." The officers moved past them, photographing the locks, the boxes, the mail in Corey's name. The wind rustled through the trees as if the house itself was exhaling, reclaiming its breath. The hearings began quietly, in a Charleston courtroom that smelled faintly of dust and lemon polish. I sat beside Micah Jo, her folder stacked with affidavits, timestamps, and photographs of every forged page. Across the aisle, Corey kept her eyes down. Jace whispered to her once, but she didn't answer. Micah spoke firmly, her voice even as she laid out the case: elder financial exploitation, attempted deed fraud, constructive eviction. Each word landed like a slow hammer. When she played the recording, the courtroom went still, hearing my daughter's voice echo through the speakers. "She's confused. She'll sign anything" was like being stabbed twice, once for the crime, and once for the memory of her as a child. The judge listened without interruption. When it was over, he leaned back, adjusting his glasses. "Mrs. Bram," he said, "this court recognizes your sole legal ownership of the property and finds you to be a model of restraint. Most people faced with this level of betrayal would have acted out of rage, not reason." Outside, the sky had turned a pale gold. Micah told me that Corey's forged power of attorney was officially void, and the bank had frozen every joint account tied to her name. Nevin, the cousin, had already surrendered his notary license to avoid a felony charge. His plea deal kept him out of prison, but left his reputation in ashes. Jace sold his car to cover his attorney's fees. Corey accepted a plea agreement: community service, restitution, and mandatory counseling. She avoided jail. But I could see in her face that the damage went deeper than any sentence could reach. When the ruling was finalized, I walked down the courthouse steps alone. The spring air was cool and clean, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without the weight of waiting. Mireya was waiting by her car with a thermos of coffee. She handed it to me without a word. I took a sip, staring at the city skyline, quiet, sturdy. Mine again. Some victories don't feel like celebration. They feel like surviving the storm that should have swept you away. The house smelled of fresh paint again. Pale sage on the walls. Sunlight pooling against the windowsills. I'd scrubbed myself. The air no longer carried that faint, restless echo of strangers walking through my rooms. It felt like the house was exhaling at last. On the wall by the front door, I'd hung a small brass hook engraved with a single word: home. I placed my old keys on it, the ones that no longer fit the locks, but still fit my hand perfectly. They were scratched, dented, heavy with years. I let them dangle there, a quiet reminder of what it had cost to keep my own name on the deed. Sunday mornings have their own rhythm again. Mireya comes over with her wide-brimmed hat and a tin of scones, insisting I sit while she pours the tea. We talk about small things: the neighbor's new puppy, the magnolias blooming early, the Charleston humidity that never really leaves. Sometimes we laugh too loudly, and it startles me in the best way. There are no cameras now, no lawyers waiting for calls, no recordings humming in the dark. Only the hum of the kettle, the creak of the porch swing, and the peace that settles when a storm has finally spent itself. A letter arrived last week, thin and cautious, in my daughter's familiar handwriting. "I'm in therapy. Maybe next Christmas I read it twice, then folded it back into its envelope. It sits on my desk beneath a paperweight shaped like a seashell. Some things don't need answers right away. Healing, like forgiveness, moves at its own pace. That evening, as the sun sank behind the rooftops, I brewed another cup of tea and stood by the window. The brass hook caught the last slant of light. Keys glinting softly. I touched them once, then let them rest. Love built me. Boundaries saved me.